Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Muscle and the Hustle. As usual, me and Mickey have absolutely no guests on because everybody just wants to listen to us. This is going to be another deep dive. It's in person, so the quality is unreal, and we always find the conversations are getting deeper, heavier, and we probably had the most positive feedback we've ever had since we started doing the live in-person podcast, just because they seem to be impacting a lot more people. So we are trying to double down and do more and more. So please do like, share, let us know more topics you want us to dive into so we can help you on any level and even help ourselves a little bit, because it does turn into a bit of a therapy session, especially for Mickey. You know, he needs it. But no, pretty much that's the main thing I want to say. Thank you to every single message that we've been getting, because there has been an overwhelming response, which is actually really, really nice. And it makes it worthwhile because we do have to take time out of our week, not complaining. It's a great week. It's a great life. But it's one of the things that it's nice to know it pays off.
We got on the charts.
Yes, I've seen that. That's a big hitter for us.
Got on the charts last week. Big hitter. We enjoyed that. Well, we were nearly out of the charts by the time we realised we were in the charts.
Yeah. What number did it peak at? 65?
60 something in the UK and Ireland.
That's
So
quite good for
it's quite good. It's quite good when you think about it. It's not just like it's everyone's podcast from the world in that region. So
Yeah.
you're going against your James Smiths, because we're in a couple of different, because we're not just fitness. So we're in with Rogan, James Smith, all the big hitters. Jay Shetty,
Yeah, well,
Tony Robbins.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's because of all the romance advice that we've been after. Yeah, like, do you know what? It's nice because I don't like to get pigeonholed. I know if you niche down, you can grow quicker. And a
Yeah.
lot of people do that, but I really enjoy a broad spectrum of topics. And I would say, if anything, we're getting more and more heavy into like life and mindset. And it's not really just technically about muscle and hustle. It's about absolutely.
Well, funny enough, I was
everything.
talking to my designer earlier. I was like, I want to redesign the podcast artwork. I was like, because we're
Think
less
change the
we're
name
less
now.
about dick jokes than we used to be. So
Yeah.
we're more about fucking deeper stuff, and there's less, taking the piss and messing about. But I don't know about changing the name, because it's be like rebuilding
the brand.
the brand. But
Name's good though.
the name's catchy. It was catchy because we came up with it like fucking 2 minutes. Like it
You
was.
came up with it in 2 minutes. I was like,
But
"Okay,
it
I'll
was
do it."
we will be doing a wee bit of a change up the artwork slightly. But yeah, things have been good. As Tony says, a lot of good feedback. The 8-minute hustle's been going down well, which is, it's good to add that wee bit more quick kind of insight into something, like be it from my perspective, be it from your perspective. So yeah, everything's kind of going good, and we put out some feelers for some questions. We got a few back. We didn't get that many, but we got a few. But we're going to start.
They're pretty heavy though, the ones we got, but we
they're-
picked a handful that we think are good. I still think there's quite a lot, but it's one of the things where, look, if you want to pick one, then I'll pick one, and we'll just go through these as topics today, because if anybody's willing to write in the Q&A, we will always give you our best.
Well, we start off light with the Snowflake Society one.
Yeah, go for it. You can dive into
Well,
this
just
first of all.
our view on Snowflake Society from, well, don't even say the people, but Snowflake Society. See, this is one we have touched on this a few times, and our kind of view on the Snowflake Society differs from a lot of people. We don't tiptoe.
No, I think it's a joke. Cotton wool generation.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of them things where, in my honest opinion, like, my granddad had a hard time. Like, he had to walk to school with no shoes, and people are turning around and complaining because somebody's said a mean word to them.
Or I didn't get their pronouns right.
Yeah, like it's like a participation medal in school. I know that sounds terrible, but I think it's a really fucking
bad.
terrible idea.
Bad.
Like, everybody winning a medal highlights that it doesn't matter if you do well or not, because you're still going to get rewarded. And I know that.
Yeah, that's fucking the participation medal pisses me off probably most out of all of it, because it makes people believe that they have a right to, earn something out of doing very little.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea. It's one of the things, like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for rewarding people for their efforts and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, for example, like first, second, third, and then who improved the most and who worked hardest. Now, you don't need to give 20 children for doing the egg and spoon race a fucking prize. And it's one of them things where, for me, I didn't win much whenever I was in primary school. Like, I wasn't that naturally talented. I was never good at anything naturally.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that if I had got rewarded for everything, would I have been in the position I'm at? I do believe a lot of this, like, Snowflake Society thing is being pre-built in by individuals. Like, whenever we look at it, like, for example, I do believe, like, don't get me wrong, if something is wrong and you say something wrong, and there is things in society that have needed to change over time, you know, like society evolves and there is standards that are a good thing, but there is these things where people like you can't say anything now without being a bully. You can't stand your own word without somebody almost criticizing you. It's very, very difficult now for you not to feel like somebody's going to come at you. And I actually feel like it's a good thing though, because it hardens you. Like one really good example, this is me and my mother were talking the other week, and we were talking about whenever I was in school and I was getting a tough time. And the thing is, see, a lot of that, there could have been somebody the exact same as me that didn't feel like they got bullied. They just felt like that was part of their life because that was their perception. That was my perception, that is what bullying or being picked on is. But the thing is, see, the more I look back at that, one, I'm grateful because it shaped who I am. But two, when I look at it, I'm like, was probably picked on a little bit more than most, but was it like as hard as some other people get it? No, probably not. Or kids in England, you know. For me, it's one of the things where that is completely down to your perception, and then I feel like that's where you have to change and alter your view as if you feel like you're a snowflake, or you feel like you're soft, or you feel like anything triggers you. Do you know, like I do feel like it's one of the things. Like for me, I get very frustrated by it without meaning to. Like it triggers me because it even happens like us, for example. Like it's one of the things where like you go out and you order a coffee, right? And it comes out with normal milk instead of oat milk or whatever you've ordered, and you go, fuck's sake, and you start crying. But that's such a first world issue. It's like the same as like whenever somebody gives you abuse, like you've no time to worry about that if you have real issues. That's the same as like, for example, if you don't have major highlighted stresses in your life, you make something a stress without realizing it, because it becomes the biggest thing in your life. If everything's hunky-dory in your life and you get a flat tire, that is the bane of your day. And it's hard for you to hype that down. But yet, if somebody's down in your family, that feels like everything is more intense than that. But to that person with a flat tire, that's all that matters. So I do feel like it's hyper-focused is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, if you've been wrapped in cotton wool for long enough and a small thing happens, it derails everything and you think it's the end of the world because you've never had to overcome any sort of like hardship. It's like I was speaking to a young fella. I was speaking to his dad and the young fella at the gym the other day, and he's just he was saying his dad said he just won a Gaelic tournament. I was chatting away and I said, "Oh, do you always get picked first?" And he goes, "Oh, they don't do that anymore in my school." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, the teacher picks the teams because some of the kids didn't like being picked last."
Yeah.
And I was like,
it is a shit feeling being picked last.
I've probably have been picked last, maybe once or twice, and I was kind of like, all right. And then I go, he goes, yeah, but you know, it was always nice. And he just, the wee boy said it, he goes, it was always nice for us to get picked first.
Yeah.
No, because like him and his friends would have had like, you know, who's better, who got picked first, or who was the team captain. And I was like, oh, but you still have captains. And he goes, only the school team has captains. He goes, we don't have captains before that. And you're just like, fucking hell. Like it's really getting to the point where everybody's, the equalness has been played out. But I think that's not beneficial because every social environment needs leaders. You know, you need leaders, you need antagonists. If everything's all mundane, you're going to evolve into fucking a nothing. No, you're not. If you don't have leadership qualities instilled in you, it's like you can remember back to like when you played in school teams, played in underage teams. There was always people that stood out and go, "He's a fucking leader." Like he can lead people.
The counter argument to this, though, and I'm sure other people will be there because I'm the sort of person who's picked last, is you then all of a sudden you're getting told constantly, though, you are the last pick, the least worthy. Even if you are a very smart, intelligent kid, you're getting it programmed into you and you're getting a story told you that you're worse off than other people. So then, don't get me wrong, I'm with the Snowflake Society, but that one example of where, like, for example, you're picking people where the teacher's probably picking even teams, I'm like, that does make sense to me because then you're actually getting an equal terms. That's not, fair enough, it's not built in somebody, but it's not breaking somebody else down, because if you keep telling somebody their last pick, that is going to ruin their confidence. You tell somebody that's first pick, and that's where they're trying to get that balance. And then they're trying not to make people...
there is the counterflow in that, but there's also the counterflow
it's
in...
both sides. Yeah,
you'll never realize. So you think, oh, the lack of effort I'm putting in here is enough. Whereas sometimes people just need that wee boot in the hole to go, you need to up your game. It's the same way as people now, if they don't get promotions in work, are taking people to HR departments all the time. Whereas if I had a company, there would be no HR department. I'd be the HR department. And that's the truth, because people are allowed to put in these fake grievances against people and companies for the silliest, most minor thing. And they're wasting their money, they're wasting their time, they're wasting their energies and following it up, when really in reality it is some people just work harder than others. Some people are better in their jobs than others. Some people are happier in their jobs than others. But when it comes down to it, if I went for a promotion and I didn't get it and someone else got it, that's it. Someone else got it. Whereas people now don't like that because they're used to being handed everything, or used to being
That silver spoon.
But that's just the way every single person's coming through life now, because even now, when people aren't getting into universities, they're objecting and appealing.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. And do you know where I see this? I see this with people I know as I've grown up. People who are getting more of a silver spoon than others. I notice it comes back to bite them in the arse in later life.
But that's what I mean. Now they're setting the shit that's happening now with young people. They won't see the knock-on effect of that probably to their 30s, when it starts to really, griping them and going, oh, hold on. Why do I not get that? You can't turn me down for this.
Yeah.
I've done this worked for you for 5 years, and I deserve this raise, or I deserve, it's like this whole raise mentality. If I don't get more money, I'm leaving to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's definitely this thought process of where you see, for example, somebody's raised in a wealthy household, right?
Yeah.
And they get everything they need. They get cars, they get clothes, they get everything. And don't get me wrong, they've maybe done a bit of work, but majority of their life has been very cushy.
Yeah.
The problem is that work ethic, that want, that value of what money really means to an individual, it's never pre-programmed in. And the problem is it happens whenever they turn 30, they realize, Joe, even if they do have enough money off their mum or dad or whoever's supporting them to live life for the long run, they all of a sudden feel lack of purpose, lack of drive. They know that what they're viewed as, they know the view of themselves. Yeah. And then the problem is that is hardwired into them, and that's very hard to walk away from.
It's mad. It's as you said, it's hard. It's like, it's probably deep, whatever deeper than hardwired is. It's like their being. It's all. But then again, it's all they ever knew. They didn't. There is some ones that would play up that, play the advantage of it. But there's some of them that, there's some of them just don't know any different. They've never known a difference, so they don't. And when they do know a difference, they can adapt, and they can work out of it. But there's other ones that just be like, fuck.
Yeah.
I know certain fellas that are in that book, and they've had to adapt.
Is your family, without getting too personal, is it if you had to rate your family in terms of income, mum and dad, were you low, middle, or higher class?
Probably middle.
Yeah.
Comfortable middle, but not close to higher.
We were low. We were definitely low for my childhood, and then middle as my dad got promotions.
But then it was always bred into us. We couldn't get everything we wanted, but we could almost get everything we needed. But if we really needed it. But if I said I want that, it'd have been a straight no. But if it's something I needed, like if I needed a new pair of football boots, I could have got a new pair of football boots if I needed them. Now, I couldn't just take a notion of going, I want them parades, or I've just been told, wise up.
See, I think it's interesting because things like that predisposition us when we get older. Really good example is we would have been a low to middle class family, but I would never went without, my ones would have went without for me, even though I didn't realize it. Say, for example, I wanted Pokemon cards, or I wanted X, Y, Z.
Were you a Pokemon man?
Whenever I was young, yeah. I mean, I was very, do you know that people say, oh, you're, introvert or extrovert? I was just video games and to myself and didn't really speak to people. And sure, I had speech therapy that I was fucking 8. And it's one of the things where I probably still need it. And it's one of the things where my ones would have went without. But that's now predisposition me because if you look at my life now, I can't take without giving to my ones.
But that's you value money more.
I struggle to spend that much money on myself. I always have to reinvest it to make more because I value. It's not guilt. It's the fact of I know what it's like not to have it.
Yeah,
and see this. But
that's kind of like survivor remorse, isn't it? In a way,
yeah, to an extent, it's just one of them things where now that I finally got my ones, sort of me and my ones financially free, but mortgages and stuff and all are done, and I know that we're safe. I start to spend money now, but see, until that point, it was at a stage where you're turning around and you're being like, why would I buy a Lamborghini or why would I buy a supercar whenever that money can get pumped back into houses, which then will eventually keep us safe. I think whenever you actually have, if anybody's had money stresses before, and I mean real money stresses where Joe, you don't really have enough for heating, or you don't really have enough for a new car, or there's issues, cars that are breaking down, so you're sort of fucked. you don't really understand the value of money, because like that's what's happening right now in society. If you look at it, like with the interest rates and the inflation rising,
Yeah.
there's a redistribution of wealth, because this is in most countries. The UK is very different. Like if you look at most countries like the States or India or China, there's a very, very different divide of money. There's the rich and there's the poor. Whereas in the UK, there's been a lot of middle class. And this is what the inflation's about now. It's a redistribution of wealth, because the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer, because the divides get more. A really good example is as the mortgage rates increase, rent's going to increase.
Yeah.
So then it's going to be, people are going to find it even harder to buy houses, but then people who are renting houses will be able to cover it, because they'll still make the same. Like for example, if I was renting a house for say £600 and the mortgage was 400 and I was making £200 profit, even though you wouldn't be because you're all the rates and all that shit. But say that my mortgage jumps to £500, I just jump my rent to 700. And the thing is, when the mortgage comes back down, the rent never comes back down.
No.
It never does.
No, it never does, no.
And then it's one of these things where that creates that divide, and people wonder, well, what the fuck's going on? But that is where that's going to happen, because you'll notice now there's people who have reinvested their money, it's paying off long term, but then there's also people who have lived like a very luxurious life for like a normal wage, like maybe 4 or 5 holidays a year. They've got a real nice car, which 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like if you were on a similar wage, you wouldn't have had that quality of life.
No.
So that's where I think the expectation of that is really coming back to society now, which is very, very interesting to see.
Yeah, it is. It's, as you said, the richer are going to get, like there's more billionaires than there ever was before.
There's going to be a trillionaire, isn't there?
Well, there
the
is.
First trillionaire is going to be by 2030, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is mental.
I liquid one, but there's some now already and like fucking whatever they call it. Like,
but that's a very interesting. But even just the predisposition of like how your childhood with money, with family, with values, you can see that. Like for example, like you can see like my ones didn't have much, so like everything is emphasized in family. Then that's drilled into you over time. And that creates your values, that creates your system. Whereas if you aren't close with family or close with friends, then you end up valuing that more. It's a very interesting dynamic. I know we were talking about sort of snowflake society. And we've rattled on, but
as we always do, it just rattles on to different stuff. But the snow, like what's your? That's the thing I always do. Do you view like team sports or team stuff as super important for young people? Like as important, like, that whole...
It's good for like learning skill. Like it's good for actually building friends. Do you know what I mean? Like
building friends, but building the skills. If you think about it, building the skill sets to get through your teens.
Yeah, it is, because I feel like you need some sort of hobby outside of like video game. Like video games are if you're playing with other people. Like I know that sounds stupid, but at least you're communicating. Whereas if you're just on your phone scrolling, that's where like you do notice it now. Don't get me wrong, everybody's guilty of this, and I don't want to bore people to death, but it's one of the things where like you can see it more and more now. And I'm sure this is the way our parents looked at us when we were starting with the screens. You look at somebody that's 13 now, and you literally will not see them without a phone in their hand.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things where that's probably how we look to our ones, but now it's like sort of super gassed and it's extreme. But the thing is, that's going to create issues down the line. It's just like, for example, I was listening to this podcast, I think it was Chris Wills, and he was saying like a staggering, like a larger than ever amount of women now past 30 are more career driven and not having children.
Yeah.
And it'll be very interesting for him to see the stats on contentment, happiness whenever they're 50 plus.
Yeah.
For the women who chased a career and don't have kids, are they happier or are they not? Now, statistics say that like as a woman, you'll have more it's not maternal instincts.
Maternal instincts.
So then down the line, it'll be interesting to see, do they go, I should have went with family? Because the top 5 regrets whenever you're on your deathbed usually are: 1, shouldn't have worked so hard; 2, should have spent more time with family.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start looking at what people are doing and they're following these they're not even listening to that sort of advice, which is very interesting.
Well, in general, the big regret is always time. There be like different ways of having your time, either working too much or not spending enough with family and friends, but it always comes down to time, no matter what, because the way society is, the way we are, you do it with your apps, you try to stay off social media as much as possible. The amount of time that actually any of us waste procrastinating, doing stuff that probably isn't that important when you break it down, is wild when you add it up. Like it's wild.
Disgusting.
It's and I know like when you can geek out in it and look and people go, well, I want to wee scroll. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm the king of scrolling at night, right? But I won't make an excuse for it when someone goes, oh, I've never say, oh, I've no time to do it, because I know that I have the time if I want to make the time. Like if I have a day, like today, gym here, Dublin, after Dublin, I'll get my steps in. Tomorrow morning, straight away, on the go again, right? That's because I know that needs to be done. But you get these people make excuse going, oh, I couldn't go to that. Like for instance, you probably hear it all the time. I couldn't make the gym. Didn't have time.
Yeah.
Or I couldn't get my steps in. I didn't have time.
Which is just...
But then you're like, but I turned off a couple of episodes of this or episodes of that. There always is, unless like something like extraordinary, there's always 20 minutes.
I'm sort of of that mindset too. And I think people are afraid to say that now because they're like, oh, but you don't have kids, but you don't have this. And I understand that. But then the thing is, you have other things. Like, for example, when somebody, and this isn't even straight, like, I understand that's a completely different commitment.
Yeah.
Like, that is.
Kids is probably the one that.
But at the same time, do you have about 7 fucking businesses that you have to run? Do you know what I mean? Then do you have X? Everybody's got their own crutch. Like, for example, I have a mum that's on with me, right? And she runs 3 like sort of spar shops, right? By herself. She's single. She has 3 kids. And she's like, look, I don't have time. Not that I don't have time to go to the gym. She goes, it just doesn't suit, but I'll do as much steps you want. This woman hits, I give her a target, 20,000 steps. She'll hit it. Doesn't matter. She'll nail all her food. So it's a factor working around it. Like, for example, I had 17,000 steps today, right? So I got up at 5:30, got up an hour earlier to go do them. I'm in here, blah, blah.
You're fucking Mark Wahlberg.
But it's one of them, but it's one of them things where this is temporary. This is not for life. It's just that. But like, for example, I was at 10,000 there whenever I went to the gym at say 11 o'clock. And I was like, fuck, I have to drive Dublin, podcast, then go home. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to be stepping out. And I was
do you still do the walk around in between sets?
Just about to say that. That's exactly what I've done. I got 2,500 there in between my...
Fucking hell.
But the thing is, that's being smart with your time. Like, that's
20 minutes probably walking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just dawdling. But it's one of the things where for me, if there's a will, there's a way. If it means enough to you, we'll find it. It's like a really good example is like I know more could have been hours doing built my business on a Sunday after a full week in the fire service. Every Sunday I'd spent maybe 10, 12 hours doing check-ins, running through business marketing. But the thing is, it meant enough to me. I found the time. And the thing is, it is one of the things where like if you have responsibilities, like you have children, you have work, you have a wife, you just need to tell yourself, right, they're my priorities. You can't do everything then, but you have to accept the consequence. So really good analysis of this is there's always a consequence for what you do. So really good example is like the consequence of me spending that Sunday grinding meant that my family life suffered, my relationship suffered, even my mental health, maybe my downtime, maybe my quality of life, my experiences. The pros are, I made more money, I can reinvest it later, I can have downtime later on. Really good example is if you spend all that time on a Sunday with your wife, great, you get quality time, you get good sex, you build a better connection, you build better relationships. But the downside is you maybe never get out of the job that you don't like. You maybe struggle. But the thing is, that's fine. As long as you actually tell yourself, right, well, what do I have time for? Because the problem is we usually frame ourselves with these expectations that we can do everything at once. Yeah. Versus in your life, right now I'm dieting pretty hardcore. And I'm only just ticking along, slightly pushing business, like very, very minimal. Yeah. And everything in my family, like my personal, is okay. It's ticking along. Yeah. But I'm not expecting to grow 100,000 Instagram followers, go up X amount of money, and have the best family. I'm like, this is my main focus. This is going to take a lot of my energy. When that is done, I will pull it back and move forward and see if I'm happy enough. Now, I just think it's more so framing because it's one of the things where you just expect, like, that's why I turn around to people and I'd be like, if you have a really stressful job, you have kids, you have a wife, and you need to take the fat loss at a slower rate and it needs to be balanced to your individual life. The problem is when people say make time for it, you can. But the thing is, would you rather take it a wee bit slower and make time for your wife? And I think that is the balancing game. Whereas it's one of the things where people say, right, do you lean in now or do you not? You just have to go, well, what is more important to me? And be brutally honest right now. Yeah. And then when you make that choice, you aren't obsessed with the outcome. Because I have people that come to me all the time. They're like, I want to build a business. I want to do this. And I'm like, it needs to mean more to you than X that you're doing. That Saturday night. It needs to mean more. And then when you make that decision not to go out on Saturday, you're not cracking up because you're missing the crack. Yeah. You're like, I'm happy enough with this. The problem is people expect to have their cake and eat it. Their spin is all the plates. But the problem is you can only spin so many plates at one time period. And if you try and spin them all, you end up just spinning them shitly and then you never get anything done. Does that make sense?
Well, it's the same as if you're planning to save money, it's not a time to spend money. If people saying, oh, spend to make, but that's not saving. Yeah. There's certain times in life where you have to save money. Certain times in life where you should invest or if you can invest. But you can't do them both at the same time.
Yeah, really.
It's like a push and pull system. It's like when someone goes to Tony going, I wanna add muscle, but I want to lose body fat. First thing you'll go is, no, we'll lose body fat first. We'll bring it down first, and then we'll recomp. You're not these boys that go, oh, we'll do both at the same time. Yeah, you might get a wee bit, but they're both going to be counterproductive to the next. Where we're going to put you on a hard fat loss phase, and then we're going to rebuild.
Yeah.
And everybody anybody that's trained with Tony, you're dreaming of the rebuild phase because that's where you get to fucking eat, right?
Yeah, great.
And that's where you want to be, but you can't just go in straight away and go, I'll do a bit of both, or I'll do.
I think the money side of things is a good example too.
The money side of things,
I think that's a better example because
it's like.
But it's like all them. It's like whenever you go, it's like, for example, me turning around and going, right, I want to go away and I want as many holidays as I can over somewhere.
Yeah.
But I also want to save and buy myself a house next year.
Yeah.
You trying to do both is fine, but you need to accept that it might take you 2 years to get the house, but you did your holidays. Or you need to go, when do I want the house by? Right, let's cut down. And the shitter quality of life you have, obviously, the quicker you'll get to that goal. But then you have to weigh up what do you want for yourself. And I think the problem is you try and get both at the same time and then people get frustrated. Versus I knew I'd eat shit for a couple of years to then have better life later. But a lot of people, even me looking back at that, I'm like, oh, I probably should have balanced things a little bit more. Yeah. But I'm grateful now I didn't because it sped things up. Like most people can't build the property business I have in 2.5, 3 years, or probably 4 years now, actually, maybe more. Yeah. In that short time period, most people would take a decade to 15 years.
Yeah.
But I was like, look, I'll just go all in, get it done, and then that's it. And it ticks along now. So I'm grateful for it. But at the same time, then you look at the quality of life, and that's where you do have to have them expectations. And I think it's just framing in your mind that as well.
That's what it is. It is, but it's you have to be okay with that decision yourself. There's no, even if you have to lie to yourself, you have to be okay with it. Like there was a guy I talked about him a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, and he was telling me about his business. There was a couple of struggles. He didn't know where to go. He didn't know how to get it like really booming, really growing. And then the next time I was speaking to him, he sent me literally a picture of your old car. Not that actual car, but he goes, I'm buying this here.
The Insignia or Raptor?
The Raptor. And I was like, right? And he goes, yeah. And I said, I thought you said business was, and he goes, no, business is okay. But he goes, just want this wagon. I was like, well, how about take the money you're going to buy that for and invest it in yourself and get yourself a fucking mentor or someone in business that's going to help business? Because then down the line, you might be able to afford 3 or 4 Raptors.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you'll always hear, like Alex Ramosi said, like if you can take the money and reinvest it in yourself to earn more, then that's the first skill set you require. And then after that, it's reinvestments and other things. Like really good example is my Raptor originally would have cost me 50 grand, right?
Yeah.
And I saved up 20 grand over a year or two, then goes, I'll just keep driving my dad's car. Eventually I had about 40 grand, right, sitting there. And I was like, fuck, do you know what? I'll just buy the Raptor. Then I was like, no, wait there. What's the minimum I can put down? And it was like 10 grand. So I took the other 30 grand, bought 2 apartments, Joe, with it. And then the monthlies were covered for the Raptor by the apartments from the deposits. So all of a sudden now I paid 10 grand and the rest of it was just paid off monthly. So whenever I sold the Raptor, I still had the monthlies running. Whereas if you paid the 40 grand up front, because I remember whenever I done this, somebody Googled the license plate and was like, oh my God, it's on finance. This is so stupid. And the first thing I thought is leveraging debt is actually one of the smartest things you can do. And people that don't understand that, a really good example is whenever this sounds terrible, but you'll hear the older generation talk about need to clean the mortgage. If you got 50 grand, wipe it off the mortgage. And I do understand that because that's a safety net process.
Yeah.
But if you bought 2, 3 apartments with deposits there, that would pay off your mortgage plus give you £100 a month. And then even when your mortgage is done, you'll still have the passive from the properties and the equity built in. And that is how you get rich and wealthy long term because you're thinking of the long game and how to leverage your debt. Yeah. Now, is there more risk and all of that? Yes, but not if you're smart. And it's one of the things where that for me is a no-brainer. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And see the thing we were talking about that also connected with me, we were talking about expectations. I think how you frame the expectations in every area of your life is very important because one of the reasons people think their sex life is shit is because they expect it to be like porn.
Yeah.
They expect their romance to be like a Disney film. They expect their gym routines to be like fucking Zeus and they expect to be massive in 6 weeks. And it's one of these things, see, whenever you down-regulate your expectations, you become a lot more content.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I love the gym now. It's not because of the results I get. It's because I go in with the idea like I'm getting nothing in return, but just endorphins and enjoying the pump. And then when you get the result over time, it builds. The same with your business, the same with the small things. When you frame it that you're getting minimal back and you're doing it because you're enjoying the actual journey, the actual moment, you're enjoying each rep, each challenge, each issue, then whenever you get the reward, it's much better. Whereas no matter if you frame it that you're going to go to a bodybuilding show, you're going to win, you're going to get married and the sex is going to be great and it's going to be the best marriage ever. See, even if it's you think you're going to have a 10 out of 10 marriage and it's a 9 out of 10, you're going to so be hyper-focused that it could be better. And you're going to think grass is greener and then your mentality goes, because life is literally all about us framing expectations. Your happiness is a complete dictation of your expectations. So like most people aren't happy because their expectations aren't met. So the best thing for you to actually do isn't think, how do I become happier? How do I be more? It's to lower your expectations, and then your contentment and your happiness level actually surpass it. And that's why you notice people who have little usually are the happiest and the most content because they don't expect as much.
Yeah, or they've genuine expectations and not inflated ones.
Fuck, I love
a lot of people now have a lot of inflated expectations because they see other people's lives more often now because of social media.
And they're all lies.
And they think, oh, this is what he's doing. I should be doing that because we're very similar age, similar everything. And you believe you're as talented, so you believe you should be earning what they're earning, you should have the life that they're earning. And that's where you give yourself these weird expectations that you need that life, or you need that girlfriend, or you need that wife, or why is my girlfriend not look like her? And you start creating these weird scenarios in your head.
Illusions. You create an illusion of what reality should be like. And I love that because it's one of these things where don't look at the highlight reel. Don't look at the person's life from the outside in. You would actually need to spend a month with, say, me or Mickey or somebody who's doing relatively well in society terms, which isn't even fucking true. It's just your what you frame as well, because we get stuck at certain areas. And you could probably turn around and go, this is what he gets for that level of effort in all these areas. But then this is shit. That's shite. That quality of life's muck. He has to step to this time. He's working 24/7. Joe, he can't even get off his phone. He can't even go on holidays without taking a break. And then all of a sudden you start seeing these cracks and you start going, do you know what? My life isn't too bad, because I do a lot of analysis for people whenever it comes to their productivity, their energy management stuff. And whenever I start to see the gaps, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want that, but that's great. Do you know, like that person gets a Saturday. It's a real good example is like, for example, my sister works in O'Neill's 9 to 5, and people are like, oh, 9 to 5. I'm like, she gets weekends off. Like. I've worked pretty much every single weekend. Like I was in Helmy's filming there like 2 weekends ago for fucking like 6 hours. Joe, it's one of the things where like there's pros and cons to every single situation. The problem is when you work that and it's framed to you that something is better, you're constantly thinking of expectations. I could go to Bali, I can travel, I can do this. And there's a lot said for just going, am I actually content with what I'm doing? Look at the negatives to that situation too. And then you usually end up a lot happier. It's like I was saying in the last podcast, always ask yourself, how could things be worse? What is the negatives to that as well? Because they're not always positives. As I said, there's consequences for every decision.
There's always negatives and everything. Like people would look at my lifestyle and go, oh, he's got a lot of spare time during the day because I mostly work nights. But then the other people are like,
nights though, like Joe.
Then the other people are like,
exactly.
Fuck. But like I would ring when I'm driving. I ring a lot of the boys and they'd be like, "Where are you going?" Going DJ, and they're like, "Fuck me, lad." I was like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm on the sofa. I'm about to go to bed."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What time are you finished?" And you're like, "Up 2. I'll be home about 3:30." And they're like, "Oh no."
Like you be getting into bed, and I reckon like 2.5. Like I'm never up later than 6 now. Like Joe, and it's one of the things where like if you look at that, I'd be like, it wouldn't matter how much you pay me, I'm not willing to do that. But then you get like maybe a Monday full day off, and that's a great day to have off because the town's not busy. You can go in for coffee, you can enjoy it. Joe, there's pros and there's cons. And I think the problem is a lot of people see a certain individual or a certain time point and they go, look at all the pros to that without going, sweet mother of Christ, look at the negatives. Really good example is you see the celebrity lifestyle, you see all the money they're earning, but then you look at the cons. They're always in the public eye. They can't do anything normal. And look at how volatile their lives is. Everything is up and down. Relationships right now. And none of them overly look exactly happy or content. And it's one of the things where you're never taught how to be that way. But it's one of the things where, but then people go, oh, they're minted, they're successful, they're well. That's what society picks you towards. And it's because it keeps you on the rabbit wheel and it keeps you always chasing. I don't know.
Imagine if you were like we'll close out after this. Imagine you were like a multi-millionaire, had all the money in the world, but every time you spent money on anything, someone like you were under the eye, so you could never enjoy it. You bought a nice car and you're like, oh, look at them flashing the cash.
It is one of the things where it's all part and parcel. I think that's why it sort of leads on to the next question we have, which is really good, is how to trust and enjoy the process and the journey. And I feel like one of the main things is realizing that your journey never finishes. You're never going to reach your destination. So a really good example is if I am dieting for the show at the end of April, right, and I hit that, the journey doesn't just cut dead. I move into something else. So that's why it's really important, because the dopamine hit you get from a result or from a comp or from a money goal or from sex or whatever it is will hit you and it'll leave you. So the thing is, it's key to get dopamine and enjoy the journey throughout. And the thing is, you need to realize that the only thing that really matters is who you're shaping into as an individual. That's the only way you enjoy the process. It's a really good example is like setting yourself standards or character traits that you want to have and working on them slowly and realizing you're becoming a better person. That's how you actually enjoy the process. The problem a lot of the time is too many people are focused on the outcome rather than the process. And the thing is, you don't even you never really get the outcome.
No.
Unless you nail the process for a long time period. And
Yeah.
the problem is you'll fall off the process. That's why the fitness term sustainable, even though I fucking hate it.
It's fucking
Sustainable fat loss shouldn't be sustainable, because the reason being is because you shouldn't be in a fat loss phase for life. See, these people that are dieting people for 16, 20, 24 weeks, slow and steady. Dieting me for half a year, no, like that is shit. Just diet me for 6 to 7 weeks. Tough, hard, get it done, and then I can
try not to rebound too much where you have to go longer.
And I can enjoy the 44 weeks or whatever the fuck of the year. That's normal. Yeah. That's the real way to have a lifestyle.
Yeah.
This idea of like, where you're tracking every meal for the rest of your days is fucking melty. But that's why you have to enjoy the process in terms of, otherwise you start to burn out. You start to mentally exhaust yourself because you're always looking at the frame, and that's the grass is greener. Once I hit this point, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Once I get lean, I'll be happy. And then you want bigger arms, you want bigger glutes, you want this, you want that. And the problem is that creates this never-ending cycle of the carrot. You're the rabbit on the fucking treadmill, and there's a carrot in front of you. And even if you do get the carrot, you want a bigger carrot, you want a shinier one, you want a different fucking color. And this is where you will only, and the worst thing is this happened to me, right? And the only way I got over that is because I got the carrot enough times that I was like, the carrot sucks.
The carrot didn't matter.
Carrot didn't even taste nice.
No.
I'm not even a fucking rabbit.
It's like when you got your first like high paying client, you were like, fuck yes.
Yeah.
But then when you got your 10th one, it was just like,
man, new norm.
And then you might have set a target, you wanted 40 paying every month, and then you got the 40, you're like, fucking yeah. And then before you know it, you're 60 or 70, and you're like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like drugs. It's like chasing the dragon. You know, your first hit. And then they start. It's like when they say, "Oh, it always starts somewhere," and then before they know it, they're on the fucking hardest of the hard.
Yeah, a really good example. I'll be open and honest. Is years ago I had this goal. Fuck, it'd probably be around the fire service. I had the goal of 100K a year for coaching, right? Which for a lot of people sound absolutely bonkers. It's not really in the fitness industry now. 100K between everything, Joe, fire service, coaching, lifeguarding, investments, all that property, and see when I hit it, it literally was like, oh.
Yeah.
It was like, but the thing is, see, because I actually enjoyed it. And then on top of that, you know what I love most is it wasn't what I got money-wise. It was who it turned me into because I focused on it. Yeah. I literally built in that I'm a hard worker. I built in that I can do anything that I want and put my mind to. Yeah. I built that I can get money, that I'm worthy. And then you start looking at built my confidence, and you look at all these things that it done for me because I enjoyed it. And then you start to go, doesn't really matter the fact that I've nailed that, because now I know if I put my mind to something else, I can do it. And you translate them skills. That's why I'm so obsessed with fitness, because the first time I got abs, then I was like, if I can do this, and I put in that hard work, and I went from A to B, I can go from A to B and anywhere as long as I stick the head down. But it's all about what you get out of it, because then that transfers into other lives. Like if you're an extremely hard worker because you work on your body, you work on your business, and something goes wrong in one of your personal relationships or your family life, you have a hard work ethic. You'll know yourself. You'll go,
I've been here before.
I can fucking fix this because I can work myself. Whereas if you have no drive because you've not been enjoying the process, you've not been working on yourself, you've not been achieving goals slowly, then the thing is you turn around and go, oh, why me? I can't change this. And all of a sudden your script is completely different to somebody else. Whereas when shit goes wrong in my life, I'm always like, right, how do I fix this? It's not, oh, do you know, it just was that way. It was just, oh, do you know, I'm just unlucky.
What it is. That's why I fucking hate that.
Like, don't get me wrong, I understand why people say that because they're trying to take pressure off themselves, but I would rather take responsibility and how do I change it? Even if you can't change it fully, how do you improve to move the needle forward? And I think that gives you more relief rather than it is what it is, because that just feels like you're the tennis ball.
You're making an excuse for yourself. And people love making excuses for themselves because they don't like to take responsibility. And that, because if you take responsibility, it has to show that you're at fault. Whereas people that don't take responsibility are the people that will be doing the same stupid shit 10 years later and going, it's just how it is. And you're like, no, it's not how it is. Because to get you to this point, there had to be some fuck-ups in the past. If you don't learn from them fuck-ups, you're going to continue to make them. It's like when boys come to me about DJing all the time, I mean, just enjoy the journey, because if you don't enjoy the journey, you're not going to enjoy the destination. You're not like you're going to get like my whole like when I got all them big gigs, they were fucking class, but 90 minutes later they're over.
Yeah, it's
over. Like, and you're like, well, what about the next one? Like I was saying to Dan before we came on, I'm probably not going to bother doing Ibiza this year because there's nothing I can get out of it unless I get offered a huge gig. The normal Ocean Beach, the normal Edens, there's no upside anymore for me to do it. It's just like Quinzer's playing out in Ibiza again. Like there's no knock-on effect, whereas before the knock-on effect was brilliant, but now it's like that's what they expect. That's the norm now. So I have to find my next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But the thing that you were when you were talking about the process and the journey, a lot of people, they want to sprint everywhere. Whereas the process is your learning curve and what you learn. The process is the real knowledge. Whereas people just want to get the destination.
That's why
they just want the destination. They don't want like a lot of people, like you can see people are quick to marry down because they just want to get, and then 5 years later it's like, fuck, I shouldn't have married that person. Because you were so obsessed with being married, or you may have set yourself like a time, like 25 or 26, when I need to be married by 26.
Plus, there's a statistic actually for anybody that doesn't want to know it, is that if you're engaged for 2 or more years, your marriage is 70%, I think, more likely to last.
Oh, so it's the longer your engagement is?
Yeah, because you've actually gave it time. I think it could be 50, 60 or 70%, but it's literally pretty much double in your chances. And to be honest, like I would like to be engaged for 2 years, but the thing is, it's one of the things where if you're 31 and you're a woman and you're worried about your clock, you might go. But at the same time, when you're 38 and you've got a kid to this person, but you're like, I don't love them. This isn't right. You could have figured that out during the engagement, moved on. And it's one of the things where it's a very interesting thing because society puts these norms on us where we have to push forward. We have to drive on. We have to be here by a certain date. Like me and you know the manuscript. Like I know it, right? So go to school, go to uni. Yeah. Come out of uni, get a full-time job between 20 and 35 grand. Work there until you're 30. Get engaged, get married, get a 3-bedroom house semi, then slowly move into a bigger 4-bedroom semi detached. Yeah. And work away in that job and slowly build up to a semi-decent wage. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're like, I'm happy this roadmap. I'm happy where I'm going. That is fucking A1. But don't walk that path and then go, this isn't the life I want. And it's one of the things where, as I've said before, you have to look up and go, am I walking the right path, or do I need to correct, and do I need to go a different direction? And a lot of the time, you'll be walking the right path and it'll feel like the right path. But at any instance, if you don't reflect, from the age you turn 30 to 32, you could go, this was right.
Aye, but it's not right now.
It's not right anymore. Yeah. And that's where people come with divorces, they come with issues, they come with job changes. And there's nothing guilty about walking a path that you're like, oh, well, that was wrong. It wasn't wrong. At the time, it was right. You can only make the best decision based off what you have.
It's like people doing multiple degrees. When you go, when you're turning 18 or whenever, when you choose what you want to do in college or university, you're not as smart as you think you are about the world that you're going to be living in, right? So it's normal for you to go, fuck, I wanted to be a teacher then, but I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a doctor or a fucking optician, or I want to do something else. There's the amount of people doing multiple degrees now because they realize, fuck, I don't want that anymore. And then they go and do another degree, or they go and do something else, or they go and do something completely and utterly different. And that's okay. It's the same as you get to your 30s and you think you want the house, the wife, the kids, the picket fence, and you realize, fuck no, I don't even want to be in this country. Yeah. Like I can't. That's the other thing. Like people realize the whole life they go, oh, I'll do a bit of traveling when they're younger, do a bit of traveling. They come back, I'm going to always settle in Ireland. So come back, you get into Ireland for a while, but there's just that wee bleed in them, and they're kind of like,
yeah,
I don't know if I want to be here, but you maybe have a wife, a child, or you might be going down that route, but there's that burning desire. You're like, I don't know if I want to be here for the rest of my life.
I think, that dives into our next question pretty well. But I think before we dive in, I really rate that, but that's got a lot of fucking thoughts going on for me now. Before we move on, I want to say, see that one thing that you'll find with enjoying the journey is you want to enjoy it. This is where people hit the fuck it button and enjoy the process, not the process, but the moment too much. And then that fucks up your later moments. So for example, it's like eating takeaway every single night and drinking every night because short term, fuck it, enjoy the ride. But then you have the issues of confidence, self-worth down the line. So the thing is, you need to walk that path of short-term pain, long-term pleasure, short-term gain, long-term pain. You need to walk that path of what's going to give you the best balance for the long run in the journey. Yeah. And then on top of that, one thing I would say as well is if you do struggle with this or struggle with enjoying or getting your thoughts right, and you're under like 30, I would say you'll probably resonate really well with this. And even if you're 40, 50, whatever it is, talk to somebody that's in the next stage of your life. This sounds very cheeky, but like, say for example, I'm turning 28 in May. So see, when I talk to somebody that's like 31, 32, 33, I always take in a bit more insight. Whereas whenever you're younger, you don't do this. Like whenever I was 23 talking to a 30-year-old, I was like, meh. Or whenever I was 18 talking to a 23-year-old that came out of uni, I'd be like, meh. Versus, see when that person's in that area of your life, you get the wisdom from them. So I find it very easy to like ask Mickey a question or even ask like Dan or somebody that's just a little bit, because they've been through my moments. They've been through that thought process. And as Mickey said, you're never as smart as you think you are. If you think you have all the answers, you have none of them. And because you're not contemplating, you're not reflecting. And it's one of these things where, for me, stop, look around, have a look and go, right, I'm going to ask, like I always ask my dad, I always go to him like, if you were me, what would you be doing? And it sounds like such an odd question. Yeah. My dad would be like, you know, like I turn around and I was like, what would you do after shows? Like after you do this? And he'd be like, see if I was you, Tony, I would just go to fucking Spain, travel. Then I would go to here, I'd go to here, I'd go to here. I'd be doing this. Because I'd also dial this back. Like, that's too much. Like, he'd be, and I'm not going, oh, do you know, he's being thing. I'm just going, that's his taking that now. I need to take that in and weigh that up. But the thing is, see, 9 times out of 10, when you talk to somebody who's lived their life, you're usually getting a really golden piece of advice. That
well, even if you get one bit of gold, it's worth it. Like, it's like when we talk about this podcast, if you listen to whatever amount of hours we're on now, 158 odd hours, and you get one bit of gold that resonates for you and
change your life.
Sometime you're about to make a bad decision and fucking I'm on your left shoulder, Tony's on your right, and you hear this wee burp, 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 and you go, fuck no, I'm not going to do that. That's all. No, you could, like, when you were saying you talking to someone slightly older, my whole thing was I always talked to people that were doing what I wanted to do. So when I was DJing, doing all the gigs, I would always make sure I collected the DJs from the airport and brought them back, and sitting for hours in the car with like Joel Corey and stuff. And I mean, just talking, finding out and finding wee nibbles of information about, you know, what their goals are and do they set goals and what they do. Because they had what I want.
Success leaves clues.
So I would always ask them questions about, you know, what way, like, how do you know, because he was doing the bodybuilding thing. I was trying to lose weight. I was like, how do you do all the traveling and still eat right?
Yeah.
And then because it's hard for like people to realize that, you know, if you're up late at night, it is harder to train. If you're up to 4 or 5 in the morning, it's a fucking nightmare.
My coach won't even take on people that do shift work.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. That's
like
he was getting trained by Jamie Durago or whatever at the time, and Jamie at the start was like, no way, and then really Jamie goes, you know what, I'll take a chance on you because you've a big following.
Yeah.
And he's like, but that's what I did. I found someone who was where I wanted to be. Well, loads of people, actually, like fucking tons of people. And I just kept asking them questions. And like them journeys in a skill, was normally always on a skill, like in a skill into to Belfast Airport. And I would just get as much information as I could. So I could make a better decision on how I was going to like cultivate my journey, whereas taking risks and leaving work, or if it was too early to leave work.
So yeah, no, 100%. That's the exact reason why, like, I ended up doing the mentorship. It wasn't out of, oh, I want to do it was out of demand, because when people are starting to catch on that to get to somewhere, just buy the fucking recipe book. Just ask the person how they done it.
It's like Sean Casey as well, and yourself.
I'm at A. I want to go to B. Yeah. You're at B, past B. You're even at C. How do I get from A to B? And the thing is, when you look at the house, right, you can see the cracks on the outside. But see, whenever you're in the house,
you see fuck all.
You see fuck all. You don't know what your weak points is. And it's one of the things I remember whenever I hired a mentor and they went, this. And I was like, it can't be that simple. But I was like, that does make sense. And then you do it and you're like, that's it. But the thing is, it's very easy for, like, for example, if I got an
they're not emotionally attached either. And they can look at it from the outside and go, well, you're doing this wrong. And you're like, I'm not doing that wrong. And they're like, no, you are. And you're doing this and you're doing that. And you're like, no, but and then when you sit down and you kind of take a step back and go, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And as you said, it can't be that easy. 9 times out of 10, it's very easy. No,
it is, yeah.
It's why is your business going wrong? I was like, do you ever think about this and that? And they're like, but sure, that'll only make a wee difference. And you're like, I don't know. Like, no, a lot of the things are, it's bad. Like, say if you're like, it's a series of small fixes. And that's the bigger thing. Like, I always say that when I consult with the bars, worry about the small things and the big things will never come.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite of everybody else. Everybody else is like, oh, we'll just put out the big fires in the head. I was like, nah. Worry about the tiny details.
1%.
And all them, but they'll never add up to the 40%. because you're never letting it happen. Instead of like a lot of people in the hospitality industry loves to put out big fires. Just don't let that ever ignite, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, a really good example is like, don't let yourself gain 4 stone and then it's not an issue. And it's the same with like a relationship. If you're worried about your relationship fizzling out in long term and issues being there, don't miss your Friday date nights.
Yeah.
Don't miss coming in and putting your phone in a box or in the table and having a cup of tea with your wife. Even if she's fucking on the phone, you're there, you're putting in the shift, you can hold your hand up and go, I'm putting in that work.
Yeah.
And trust me, see, whenever you do stuff like that, that adds up. But it's there, you look after the 1%.
Yeah.
Small changes give you big results in every area of your life. The problem is, it's very hard to see that. Like a really good example is like whenever relationships break down, you'll notice that people go to other people for advice. And the advice is always usually really good because it's not their relationship. So I always turn around to clients, especially people, and I go, if I came to you with this problem, what advice would you give me? And see, 9 times out of 10, it's really,
they answer their own questions.
It's bang on because they've not got the emotion, and then they go, oh, well, that makes sense. And the thing is, I go, what would you? It's because that's why it's so easy to give advice. It's so easy to give advice because you're not emotionally tied. And I think sometimes going, right, well, what would I say to a person that's in this exact spot? And then you actually get your answer. But the thing is, it's following through in that because do you know what people love? They'll love the take responsibility away from themselves when they get advice because they're like, Mickey told me this. Joe, I wasn't too sure.
It's his fault.
you can sort of go, well, they'll not even say to themselves, they'll go, I got that from such and such.
Yeah.
You still got the advice. You asked for it, you took it on board and you used it. It's just like whenever you're making a fucking pot of soup and somebody goes, you should add this. If you add it, it's not in that person because they told you that. You still fucking added it.
Yeah.
It's still on you. It's like, do you know whenever somebody does something stupid and then they go, oh, but you said, you still decided to do it. It's like whenever somebody takes drugs and then gets arrested. Yeah. Oh, but you said it'd be good crap. It's like, yeah, but then that doesn't mean it's on me. You still done it. It's a real good example is that peer pressure stuff where people are like, oh, but like I got peer pressure. No. You still sniffed the line, son. No. I don't give a fuck what you say about peer pressure. It's still your responsibility. And you'll be like, oh, but nah.
I think that's a sign, a very good sign of a trait that successful people. And you know, you listen to all these podcasts about the traits of successful people. I think this one's never talked about. Is successful people never make excuses. It's always on them, and I find
even
if
it's not on them,
even if it's not on them, they'll take responsibility.
Yeah.
I found that by reading so many different books and listening to different people talking, they're willing to take the risk, but they're not going to make an excuse if it doesn't happen. They're just going to hold their hands up and go, "That's all me. Let's go again. That's on me. Let's go again." I notice that with a lot of people that make excuses are normally the same people that's asking you questions going, oh, fuck, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do that. How could I do this? But that when they do hit a wee pitfall, the excuses start ringing out. Well, I didn't have time or I didn't do this or that's just not me. It's like anything in life, the effort if you put in genuine, real effort, you're going to get something in return. Doesn't matter what it is. If you want to lose weight, if you put in genuine effort to eat right, walk a wee bit more, maybe you're getting something back. But if you can hold your hand up and go, genuinely, I give as much as I can and I got fuck all back, there's something definitely wrong with you. You know, there's something underlying.
Funniest thing is it's usually because it's not what you wanted, but it's what you need. So like, for example, you might not fully lose the weight, but then you build the work ethic to work on that and get there, or you build the work ethic to then work on something else.
Yeah.
You don't, like, it's like that old saying, it sounds odd, you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And then there are the tools to build forward. The problem is what you don't realize that until you actually analyze it. Like, for example, I always thought this would be like money and followers would be my thing, and that would like sort a lot of my problems. It didn't, but it gave me the work ethic to sit and work through my issues with therapy or whatever I needed to. Yeah. Whereas if I never done them, I wouldn't have got the skill set to then build it. So it sometimes comes in a roundabout way. And I think as you age slightly, I sound like I'm fucking 50 now. Just wisdom coming out of me, midlife crisis. As you get older, you do realize these sort of, as you're having monologues in the car or walking, you do have these conversations with yourself. That's why I find it very important if you ever are trying to think or you're a wee bit stressed, don't just listen to tunes all the time. If you listen to songs without lyrics, you will get more focused.
Ben Boomer. Ben Boomer.
Ludovico is very good. Disney songs that are acoustic are very good too.
We'll stop there.
And we actually are, because that says 45, but there's 10 minutes on top of that. So we'll wrap it up with Disney guitar songs. Anyway, as usual, please like, share to your story, subscribe if you're on YouTube, or rate if you're on Spotify.
It'll always be on Spotify, on video and audio on the same file now.
Beautiful.
And then it'll be on video on Tony's YouTube and audio on Apple Podcasts.
Rate, review,
try to get us in the charts again, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, and give us topics, give us something juicy.
Every Monday at 6 a.m. and every Friday at 6 a.m.
Is that what we're wrong with? Good
Yeah.
to know the schedule now because I uploaded on Thursday, so you're getting a day early with me. So, yeah, thank you very much, and we will see you in the next one.
Ciao.